Welcome back to the I Remember That podcast. You're here with us with Kris and Ian, and today our topic is sports. What do you remember from your Little League time? Do you have a favorite team or a favorite player of any kind of sports that that was your hero as a kid? Today we're going to expand on that topic and try to remember. So Ian, I know that you love sports probably way more than I do now. So I imagine as a kid you love sports. What do you remember?
Okay, so I do love sports. You are correct in that assumption. I used to, probably like 5-10 years ago, I cared a lot more about sports in terms of like I wanted to try and keep up with the four major sports. Like I had a favorite team but like lately it's just like NFL, college football. Like I'm just a football guy. But growing up, nostalgically, I a lot of it was just like what my dad was doing. I feel like that's a super common, whatever your dad likes is what you like probably. And so my dad has always been an Ohio State fan, so football, and we watched a little bit of basketball, but football was like, I watched Ohio State football with my dad a ton growing up, and I still am an Ohio State fan because we're from Ohio originally. And but yeah, so that was like the big, like when I think about my childhood in sports, it's like, I played some sports, but it was like watching football with my dad. That's like the biggest nostalgic thing I can think of. Was your dad a sports guy?
Yeah, growing up, I think everyone watched the Vols play. That thinking back to what my parents would have watched, it mostly goes to that. But there was a stint for like 5-6 years where they watched a lot of NASCAR. So I think about that, if that counts. And then now my dad goes to basketball games and he likes the men Vols, basketball. I think Lady Vols. So they definitely watch sports. I don't know how in depth they are with players and stuff like that, but yeah, it was always around with the older people in my life.
Dude, it's so weird you say that. Like I went out of my way, like I was trying to take notes on all the different kinds of sports stuff I had growing up, and I totally forgot about my dad's NASCAR stint. Like he had the same exact thing. Like I wonder if it's like the same time frame too, because it was like my dad, and I'm kind of the same way probably because of my dad, but he'll get like really involved in a sport, and then he'll take over, like his personality becomes like his fandom. Mm-hmm. His fandom is like Ohio State he's a massive Ohio State fan, and he wears an Ohio State hat everywhere he goes, or an Ohio State shirt, or he had an Ohio State man cave at our old house, and that's great, but it was really funny at one point when he was in his NASCAR phase, he became like a fan of Mark Martin for some reason, and we just in our house all of a sudden we just had a bunch of Mark Martin memorabilia. Like it was completely out of nowhere. And my dad is like really artistic and he's a good like drawer and stuff. So he bought some like plain white, like maybe Walmart shoes and like drew them, like got markers to design them like the Mark Martin car.
I love it. Yeah, that reminds me of like Dale Earnhardt fandom. He was my hero. I don't know why. As a little kid, probably 5 or 6, I was definitely in elementary, but I was the same way. Except I didn't watch racing. I had no clue. I just thought this guy was some Southern, like how Stone Cold Steve Austin was just gonna come in and tip his hat and drink a beer and save everybody. Like that's how Dale Earnhardt was. And for some reason, when he passed, like it wrecked me, and I was just like, I don't even know. As an adult, I'm like, I don't even know who this guy is, or if he was like, I imagine he was a good racer. I only knew surface knowledge, and it's just so funny how that stuff like takes a hold of some people.
Yeah. It's funny you say that too, because I've had a lot of sports conversations and like I'm a big, like I love to debate just about anything. Like I love ranking things, I like debating, I like coming up, but like I've had I'm a big LeBron fan, or at least I had, I'm a Cleveland Cavaliers fan for or at least I was pretty heavily back in the day, and so like I've always been a big fan of LeBron, and it used to be like I would argue like, oh, he's better than Michael or he's better than Kobe or whatever. And so like kind of in the same vein of like Dale Earnhardt. And then I realized like, man, like I didn't watch enough Michael Jordan growing up to really say that. Like everyone's, so many people our age probably have that same debate, but like how much Michael Jordan did any of us actually watch? We were like 6 years old when he was like in his prime.
But
and
the one thing that maybe you're not thinking about, maybe you are, is Space Jam. Space Jam was like the number. It was huge for anybody our age. Like that was our Harry Potter. If you think about it, because I can remember seeing jerseys and I knew the people's names and I knew like Dennis Rodman being in the news for being goofy. So like there was that kind of energy seeing like as a kid. You see the news as you're walking across the living room and stuff. So as much as I didn't watch the games, I loved the shoes and Michael Jordan slamming, like that emblem, like all the branding and Nike and they really nailed it. And that's what I remember the most. I don't remember him as a basketball player necessarily. I also remember him retiring like 3 times and being so confused, like,
right,
my grandpa retired and he's not going back to work. Like, what? Why does this guy keep going back? And it's like, because he loves it, But I just remember that being in the news a lot during that time.
Yeah. And I think what you're saying too, like there was that mega marketability for him for whatever reason. Like, and I think that does matter. Like that plays a ton into, your opinion of a player in the past. Cause like another one in that same kind of, the opposite, I guess, is like Mike Tyson. Because again, we grew up and we didn't actually watch Mike Tyson. I feel like by the time he was done or whatever, we were too old. We weren't old enough to really care about boxing. But like Mike Tyson, I didn't realize how dominant Mike Tyson was as a boxer until I was like 23, and somebody who actually cared about it back in the day showed me videos.
Right.
But it was funny is like, to me, all I knew about Mike Tyson was that he bit that dude's ear.
Yep.
And it was like the biggest deal in the world. It's like, holy cow, this guy bit a dude's ear, and like that's all he's notable for to me. So like I didn't think about how good he was at boxing. It was just he did a stupid negative thing, so that's his that's his career. That's what he did. And so like Michael Jordan, like he didn't really have, as far as I know, like the way I understand it, he was kind of a dick, maybe kind of like egotistical, whatever, super competitive, which you had to be to be at that level.
True.
But yeah, like there's that element of like if you're marketable and you don't really have many like scandals or whatever, like your legacy will last forever.
Yeah, and it just goes to show how good he was. He's transcended his, like I was talking about with the wrestlers in the previous episode. If you've transcended your stage, people know who you are in their world. That means you're good, or you made it. Talking about Mike Tyson, it was funny to live that as a kid because previous to the ear, I knew him as the boss on Mike Tyson's Punch-Out on the NES game.
Right.
So I was like, this guy's a legend. Oh my God, I don't know anything about him. He's scary. And then he bit the dude's ear, and I'm like, oh my God, not only is he a boss of a video game, he is a real life monster. And then all of a sudden, years later, not all of a sudden, years later, all of a sudden, The Hangover comes out, and this guy's a teddy bear. And I'm like, I don't know.
Right.
I don't know. And then, everything since then, I've liked his repaired image. I don't know him, so I can't really give you a judgment, but he seems like somebody that's if he's considered a bad guy back then, I think he's cleaned up his act enough to play that Snoop Dogg kind of was a scary, hard person, and now I'm chill, kind of like George Foreman too. I just want to sell grills.
Yeah. Is there anybody in your life like? Because like I'm a big like ranking guy, but also like I have a favorite everything, right? Like if you ask me any category, I have a predetermined favorite, right? So was there somebody you had growing up who was your favorite, and then they fell out of grace because of something that happened like personal, like out of the sporting realm, like a Mike Tyson thing. All I gotta say is, Mike Tyson, you love Mike Tyson, then he bit the dude's ear, and now I don't like him anymore. And like you can come back around somewhat, but like once a guy,
I hate to just keep bringing up wrestling. I would just feel bad if I didn't say this one, but one of my favorite wrestlers growing up was Kris Ian. And it's really taboo to talk about him now, especially in like wrestling circles. But he was a great legendary wrestler on his way to being in the Hall of Fame. And then he killed his wife and kids, probably due to CTE. That's probably about a 500-foot deep rabbit hole if you ever want to go down that.
Jeez, yeah.
Yeah, because, it was a series of events. It was like, oh, Kris Benoit's dead. We're going to do a tribute. Oh, he murdered his family. We're never going to talk about him again. And it all happened like live on TV, like, because they were like, whoa, 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 as they were getting more, But that would probably be my biggest, like, wow, these people are human beings. They are not our heroes. Whether they've done something cool or good, anybody's human. They can still at any time just kind of snap. But what about you?
Well, I was gonna say in relation to that, I bet some people who are a little bit older than us probably had that same experience with OJ. But
oh yeah, that's another good one because I knew him from the Naked Gun stuff. I was too young I was alive for the OJ stuff, but I was too young to watch the news. But I was young enough to watch Naked Gun, and I didn't realize it was the same guy till way, way later. But I was like, this guy's hilarious, and so it was really conflicting, even as a little kid. But go ahead with your idea.
It's funny you say that because the whole. Like again, like Mike Tyson, I knew of the bite first, then his like accolades, and same with OJ. Mm-hmm. I'm like, okay, this guy, I knew about him from comedy first, then the murder, then the football, and he's like one of the most prolific running backs of all time.
I had no clue about the football and the rent-a-car spokesperson stuff. Anybody else, I love a good rabbit hole, and that was one of them. And it was just like, no wonder this guy was he did everything. And then, which eventually led to what happened. But it's just like Leslie Nielsen is another person like that. That dude had his whole serious, dramatic acting career. And then he was just like, man, I'm old. I want to be funny. And, it's like, wow, you gave us a lot to go through, a lot of lore, if you'll call it that.
Yeah, no, Leslie Nielsen is so funny. Actually, I'm not really familiar with his dramatic stuff, but he is hilarious. His slapstick stuff is some of the best.
Yeah, he wrote there was a book written, and he wrote another book that was bigger and more funny to look at. But yeah, so was there ever a time that you met a famous athlete, and was it, what did you expect? Was it weird, or was it cool? Was there a long line? Go ahead.
Well, so I've only ever met one famous athlete, might be like the only famous person I've ever met, really. If we're talking like depending on your scale, but it was Alvin Kamara, the running back for or Kamara, the running back for the Saints. Mm-hmm. And he played for UT, and I actually sat near him on an airplane. This was about 10 years ago. Well, not even. No, it had to even be more recently because he's only been in the league for like 7 years. But either way, I saw him board this airplane that I was on, and as he walked past me, I'm like, oh my God, I know who that guy is. Like, I got to say something, but I don't know what. Like,
that's
I don't want to be weird.
Feel every time.
And like, I don't want to bother them too much because it's like a thing, and I don't want them to be, I don't know, I just don't want them to think I'm weird. So I was trying to, like, I was in my head, it was an hour flight in my head the whole time, and finally we get off, and since I got off a little bit before him, I pretended to like get a drink of water at the water fountain just to wait for him. And he finally walks off, and he's got his headphones on, but I went up to him, and I was just like, I shook his hand. I was like, hey man, it's cool to meet you. And that's really it. Like, I didn't want to be like, hey, can I get a selfie? And can you sign something? I'm just like, hey man, it's cool. Good luck this season. That's pretty much all it was.
He said, Don't be sorry. Do better.
Yeah.
No. Yeah, I know. It's so funny the links that you go to because you're like in this weird once in a lifetime situation. When there's a dive bar that's think Long Branch but older and smaller, with no
Mm.
stairs in Nashville called Springwater. Did I say that? Probably did. Um, and the guy, what I always get it, Eric Warheim. Anyway, he was sitting at the bar, and I was like, "It's so small, dude. Like you have to walk by those seats. Like you could tap them on the back to walk into the venue part. It's real small." And I was like sweating. I was like, "This guy, no one's gonna believe me because he's super unique, making these crazy shows." And so I'm just like pacing back and forth. I know he's he probably thought I was nuts. I finally get my drummer to go talk to him, and he's zany, so he will. And he did, man. And instantly he was like, man, it's cool, you know who I am, but I don't want anybody else. Like he didn't say that, but he was just like, like let's keep it chill. I'm just here, and I'm like, in my
Right,
head, I was
right.
like, even you're a huge star, but even if you somehow didn't have money, I'm like, of all the places to go, it was just so surprising to me.
Yeah, and like I don't know how he's not more known. They had $1 billion movie. Like they had
Come and
surely
run my
people knew
mall,
who he
man.
was.
Yeah. Yeah, he
Um,
was. He was probably nice, but I could fully understand putting some silly ass shit out and then people being silly when all you're trying to do. He was with another person, so it's like I ain't doing that right now. That's like people coming up to Dave
yeah,
Chappelle and saying all that stuff all the time. It's probably it.
right. That's honestly like my thing is I've never met a famous. Like I said, Alvin Kamara is the most famous person I've met, but if I was to ever meet a celebrity, especially someone who's famous for being funny, like let's say it's Tim Robinson, Dave Chappelle, whoever, like the last thing I'd want to do, like the most embarrassing thing I could think, like, and people do what they want. Like I'm not like judging anybody, but
No.
like I would imagine that like you approaching a comedic presence by trying to regurgitate one of their jokes back at them, like that does not sound like something they would enjoy at all.
Right. Yeah, and most of the time, if they're not in front of a camera or on their, I'll say stage, but anywhere, football field, anything, they're a human being. Like they're not. It's like, I mean, wrestlers have to stay in character. That's like their thing. Like they have to. Uh,
Mhm.
but yeah, it's just like abrasive. I can't imagine having to deal with that all the time and having to be on all the time.
Speaking of that, actually, so a similar, I didn't meet him. I Todd and I were on a flight from Wisconsin to Chicago once, and like a row up and one seat over, like across the aisle, we were like 90% sure it was Jay Cutler, and he was a quarterback for the Bears for a while, and like I don't know, and I don't know why, like I felt compelled to do this. Like I had to, because we could just see like his side profile kind of. And so I took a picture of him and
Oh no.
I don't know, like to compare. And I still have the picture of this guy on my phone. It may not even be Jay Cutler. And it's just sitting on my phone. And this guy, like, I was even like researching Jay Cutler on the flight. I was like, okay, is Jay Cutler, because like, this guy's a multimillionaire starting quarterback in the NFL. This guy has money. Why would he be on a Delta flight? And then I was like, okay, is Jay Cutler a cheap guy? And then they're like, yeah, he totally is cheap. And I'm like, oh, this would explain why he might be on this
You
flight
paid
with
for
me.
Wi-Fi on the flight so you could look this stuff up.
Yeah, I did. And he and we're going to Chicago where he plays. So it was like, I don't know if I was just trying so hard to convince myself that it was Jay Cutler, but I never talked to him. And honestly, the thing that confirms that it probably wasn't him was he wasn't wearing headphones. Like a dude
Yeah,
like of
football.
that level, he would be wearing
That's true.
hat, sunglasses, so it probably wasn't. So this guy probably thinks I'm a real creep, and I am. I mean, I took a picture of him without his consent, but
Yeah. Sometimes
he
you
should
gotta
take it
know.
as a compliment.
That's true.
you know
He probably would have if it would have been him. I will say though that kind of can be your bar story. Like, no one's gonna look that stuff up. So as far as we can tell, you saw him, and you have so many details that you could smush together that it makes a coherent story that's believable.
You know what? I agree. I met Jay Cutler
There you
once.
go. Bring it out.
I did.
That's like, never mind. I don't think I have a story that I could even relate to sports. I guess the person that I met sports wise growing up, it was at Books a Million in Oak Ridge, and it was supposed to be Peerless Price. I think it was the 98 Vols, but I don't remember now. But I get over there, and it's Jeff Hall, the kicker, which he was really nice, and I was just as stoked to meet him, you know. But I was just like, what happened to Peerless? And I never found out. You know, as a little kid, you wait in line, you get up there, and you're like, wait a minute, this guy's not the same guy. But it was,
You know, it's so funny. I remember Jeff Hall. Like after you said,
Okay.
like I forgot that name entirely. As soon as you said it, I was like, I know Jeff Hall. Yeah.
yeah, he wrote. I took a jacket. I think I still have it somewhere. I would love to wear that jacket. It's super old looking. But he wrote a Bible verse on it, and I can't remember the Bible verse. And then he wrote his name, and yeah, it was super cool. I didn't have any questions for him though, because I was just like, I don't really watch sports. Like, I would go to, you know, now as an adult, I like going to games. If somebody's like, hey man, let's go see Nashville soccer, or you know, I got tickets to the Titans. Do you want to go? I'm always like, yeah, even though that's never happened. but what I'm saying is like, I like live events. I like the energy. A lot of hockey. But as a kid, and even now, I just can't keep up with stats or people's names, or oh, so and so got traded, or this is my favorite team. It's like I just see colors and mascots, and I'm like, sweet, two people playing a game in front of me. All right, let's watch it. Like I'm amped, but I don't know. I couldn't keep my attention on it sometimes. Or when I like met Jeff Hall, I knew he was important, but I was like, I don't know how many kicks you made. I don't know what records you broken. You know, it was the first time I was like, so if you've ever been to a Q&A, you gotta have questions or you just look goofy. Or, you know, like you're amped to talk to this person, but you don't have a question. So sometimes people will say like, I got a statement. And it's like, no. You gotta have a question. And, man, it's such an embarrassing feeling.
Dude, I can only imagine. I've thought about that a lot where like because I used to have like a football podcast with some buddies, and I've thought about like, man, if we ever got to a point where we could interview athletes, but I've always thought about like a Q&A with somebody, and I've always hated the idea of asking like generic questions of even about the sport. Like maybe if I could come up with like a weirdo like off the wall question, but I hate the idea of asking somebody a question they've been asked several times. Like I want to ask like Jeff Hall, what's your favorite comedy? You know, like what's your favorite
like a movie, yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
you know, just something where it's like something that not only like they haven't been asked before, but something that would even possibly make them like, you know, inside just be like, you know, I'm so glad you're not just being like, oh, how do you prepare to kick footballs on the weekend?
Right.
You know,
That makes me think of Parks
like-
and Recs with the Pistol Pete guy. They're like, we need you to do a layup. And he's like, I ain't doing that.
yeah, I'm not doing the dunk. I'm here as an insurance salesman.
Yeah, he's like the highest salesman or something. Yeah, and they're like, we don't care about that. Yeah. I can't imagine how that is, being an athlete. There was an NPR, the guy who wrote the book Friday Night Lights. It might not be called that, but that's what it's based off of, the movie. He went there to expose small town sports as like, we put these kids, and this isn't my view, this is just something I listened to. We put these kids into these gladiator like dopamine pushing situations where some kids, like the quarterback, could be the number one talk of the town, and then after sports they're not going to make it. Maybe, you know, 5%, 4% make it into the NFL. So they're once worshipped as a god in a coliseum. I'm making things bigger than they are, but that's just the picture I want you to have. But then they go from that to nothing, and just the damage that does on your mental state. It's just he was just bringing that stuff up, and it's just so fascinating. I can't imagine how it would be to be a somebody in the NFL, and then you get hurt or you don't play anymore, and it just now you got to be a normal person again. It's just like, whew, I can't imagine.
Yeah, no, I hear you, man. I mean, I've thought about that a lot too, and kind of on the flip side too. One thing that's crazy to me that I've had thought about is like, dude, imagine being like Michael Jordan or Tom Brady or Tiger Woods, just being like, just walking around and being considered the best in the entire world at a thing.
Yeah.
Like that's got to be such a weird feeling. Like like everyone in the world argues for you daily on the internet to say this person is the best ever.
Yeah.
And that's got to be such a weird feeling to walk around with.
Yeah. And it goes back to always being on with your personality. Like if somebody's defending you and then they meet you and you're like, yo man, I'm eating dinner right now. Get out of here. And then it just instantly turns off. And you're just like, from now on, my family will never support this person or this team again. And it's just so diehard. And it's just like, it's cool. It's the passion in that.
That's so. I've had two instances like this. Actually goes back to the question we talked about earlier, but kind of since it kind of has come back up a little bit, is like I had a couple athletes growing up that I was a big fan of that I've kind of drifted away from. Well, one's an athlete, one's a team. So like growing up, I was a big Packers fan.
Same.
For whatever reason. And I don't know even know why. Like no one in my family is, but I love Brett Favre.
Yeah.
Right. And Brett Favre was just the guy. Like he was, and I think I grew up to trying to convince myself that one of the reasons I love Brett Favre was because not only is he a fun football player to watch, but he was like, down home country boy / like family
True.
man. And like, I feel like I love that. And then like all of a sudden this shit starts happening with him where, his wife's got cancer and he's sending dick pics to that reporter.
Oh, yeah.
And then he's all this stuff coming out recently about like, he's like, whatever, cheating this one thing, whatever even happened. And it's just like, I don't know what's true, what's not. And I'm not going to judge this guy for doing a thing, but it does taint the image,
Yeah.
And
it should. If you have any sort of ethics, like, you have to, well, you could see that it's bad. It's like, where do you draw the line of art and creator? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I struggle with that all the time, being a fan of Hulk Hogan. It's like, I mean, we talked about this, I think, last episode. It's kind of like, where do you draw the line of the actor or actress and what they say on a personal level, and then the art that they created? Rob Schneider's a tough one too, man. I loved him in the 90s, but man, he says some goofy, shrilly, like, he's just trying to make money now, and it makes me sad that he's got to do what he's got to do, and that's all I'll say. Yeah,
there's a lot of that, man, with and everyone's got their their line, but also like their like how they approach it, because I've talked to plenty of people who are like, they don't care, like what they'll listen to the music and even don't even care about the celebrity of a person regardless of what they did, because like there's like Chris Brown, like so many people are like, I don't care about that.
Rough.
Like they'll just and I couldn't possibly, like I never really and it's kind of silly to say, I feel like almost one of those like one of those people who's like, oh my God, I'm going to quit drinking Bud Light because of the trans thing. And it's like, I never drank Bud Light to begin with. So like, it's, but like, I'm not going to boycott Chris Brown because I didn't like Chris Brown music to begin with, but like, I couldn't possibly imagine supporting it in the future. And the same thing is like, I mean, a big one, honestly, like sports related, personal life. Like I've been a Browns fan. I started really caring about the NFL, I think like late high school, and I joined a fantasy football league with a bunch of our friends when we worked it Outback together. And I was like, okay, I care about the NFL now. I didn't really care about the Packers. Like I want to be like, okay, who am I a fan of? And since I'm from Ohio, I'm like, okay, do I want to be a Bengals or a Browns fan? And I was like, whatever, I'll be a Browns fan. Let's do it. So I'm a Browns fan now. And I started taking that on. Like I was a huge fan of the Browns, massive fan. I didn't care. I was watching every single game. I've been to multiple Browns games, and I was keeping up with their off-season stuff. I had like 4 jerseys, and then and I was there through like, they won one game over 2 seasons, 2016, 2017. They won one game. And I didn't care. Like, I mean, I was, it's upsetting to watch, but then 3 years ago, they traded for Deshaun Watson, right? And dude, like, I remember when it happened, I remember like the notification came through on my phone. It said the Browns are trading for Deshaun Watson and paying him a fully guaranteed $250 million. And like, I was wrestling myself, I was like, how do I feel about this? Because like, I already like Baker Mayfield, which is part of it, but like the reason that he got traded for it and the reason all these teams were trying to trade for him was because he was good in the past and he was on trial, and it was like the second he was declared not guilty, it wasn't like there's proof that he didn't do it. They're just like, oh, well, at least there's no ramifications, so we don't care. And dude, like, I didn't know how to feel about it, and then I got to my wife. I remember seeing my wife for dinner, and I told her what happened because we kept up with the saga of, is he going to get fined or in trouble, whatever. And she said, are you still a Browns fan? And not in like a accusatory way. She just, are you still a fan? And I said, oh, it's kind of tough.
Yeah.
And then immediately as I said that, as those words came out of my mouth, I'm like, no, it's not. Like, it's really not. Like, I can't believe I'm saying that to like this woman that I care so much about, that like I could possibly think saying the safety of women is not as important to me as caring about a sports team.
Right.
In that moment, I was like, no, I'm no longer a Browns fan. Well, I'll go through so much for sports, but there is a line.
Right.
And that was it. Like, I quit being a Browns fan that day, and I haven't looked back. Like, I hate that team now. Like, and I hope the rest of the players have great careers, so long as they don't do some bad shit. But Deshaun Watson being there, getting paid what he's paid, I can't support it.
Yeah, and that's that just shows you how aware you are. And like one of my favorite sayings is the standards you look past are the standards you set. So I'm always like, when somebody sticks up or changes their views because of something, I'm like, hey, that's impressive, because that's hard to do, especially something that you are emotionally invested in. Yeah, Browns. Yeah, you're a huge Browns fan, so I did not even know that all that happened. Another one that's kind of like that NFL controversy is the Hernandez. I can't think of his name. Is it Eric?
Yeah, it was Aaron Hernandez.
I had no clue about all that, and when it's like, how do you go from like one of the best people in the league to so vilified? And I didn't live through that because I was alive, but I wasn't a football fan. But I remember hearing his name, and you go to work and people are talking fantasy football and stuff. So I knew about him before all that happened, but I have always been curious, like, if somebody was a fan and then lived through that and was like, what in the heck happened?
Yeah, I mean, I've got a friend who I used to work with on the road who's from Boston or the Boston area originally, who's like a massive Patriots fan. So like, he's somebody I could probably even ask about that. Like, I've never thought to even ask him that because it's always just been football related, because there's enough like Bill Belichick, Tom Brady hate to where it's like, it's,
True.
But yeah, with him, that's something I'd love to ask him about that, see what he has to say about it.
Growing up, did you play any youth club sports?
I played sports every year from age like 4 or 5 pretty much until I was in middle school, I guess. And it was mostly because, like, again, back in the day, I didn't care about sports so much. It was just like, I watched sports because of my dad, but I also played sports because of my dad.
Yeah.
And
it just made sense.
My dad also, right. And my dad was one of those like TV dad, like athlete parents where it's like he's on the bleachers, but because like even he'd be like yelling at me, but he'd treating me like all the other players. Like, we're in the military, he'd be like, "Yeah, I'll still at 25." I'm like, "Dad, it's me." And I don't know, it was just always so funny.
I've played with parents that were like that.
Yeah, and it's funny, like, thinking back, but and he will also, like, one thing I respect about it was he, as often as he could, like, participated to be one of my coaches. Like, he was an assistant coach multiple times. He was my soccer coach one year, and he didn't play soccer. Like, he wanted to be involved in that way because he cared about sports and wanted me to play. So, and he was, I think, my sister's softball assistant coach. Like, he was there. Like, it was very cool of him to be involved in that way, because I do, at least when it comes to like all those annoying bleacher parents, at least I feel like if you're going to go out of your way to yell and try and coach these kids from the sideline, have like like, personally, I don't like that, because it's a coach's job to do that, right?
Oh, that's, it's funny. It scares me to death. Like, I can't wait to have kids, or I can, but I want kids, but it scares me to be a sports parent, because it sounds like so much drama.
It can be, dude, because my daughter, she plays tennis, and it can be like, and I try my best to be like, I don't yell and tell her, like, I wait until she's done, and I might give her some pointers. Here's some things I noticed.
Yell at her in the car.
But like,
I'm kidding.
Right? Don't you embarrass me like that ever again. But she, but like, honestly, from one perspective, I don't know anything about tennis. She plays. I think partially because, like, my wife and my brother-in-law played tennis growing up, so she's kind of taken on that mantle. But she, she did multiple tennis camps, and she plays tennis now. So like, when I'm at matches, I know generally the rules now, to where I can be like, hey, like, if she says something or does something wrong, I can be like, hey, it's not that. But like, I'm not coaching her from the sidelines. I'm just sitting there. And I'm also not even one of those, and maybe I don't know if this is the right level of sportsmanship. I don't want to judge anyone who doesn't do this, but like, even if the other player, the opposing player does a really good shot, or they do a good thing, like, I'll clap for them too. Like, I just want my daughter to just appreciate good sportsmanship, to play, and like, I don't know, and I don't want to be that guy who's just yelling and trying to coach from the sidelines. Like, if I wanted to be a coach, I'd be a coach.
Right. And that's when it changes to, you can be, exactly. Like, you haven't committed the time, so why are you yelling at? It's just for fun.
Right.
It's not serious. There are places where it can be serious, but chances are it's probably not where you are right now. Yeah, I see a lot of videos and stuff, people yelling at umpires, and it's just like, dude, this guy's making like $10 an hour. Like right. Maybe leave him alone. If he's cussing and flicking cigarettes at the kids or something, sure, but chances are there's got to be somebody, to make it sanctioned, so he's there. But like I said, I don't have kids. I don't have a leg in that. But thinking about it from a nostalgic lens, like, I did play a lot of sports. I did see a lot of drama. I never did travel ball, but there's a South Park episode where they're like, we want to lose because travel ball is so bad. So I always feel like I'm probably dodging a bullet there. But I had so many friends that did it. Football, basketball, baseball, played all of those. What makes me nervous is like, we kind of send kids in to get hurt in a way, and it's like, is there injuries from that, or am I just being silly? I don't know. But overall, I think about that. Overall, sports is great. I'm not dragging sports, because you get that sense of community, sense of teamwork, and all of that carries over. And everybody needs a hobby that keeps you active, so it's a win-win. I'll tell you, I didn't play a lot of different sports until I went to a summer camp at Oak Ridge, the Civic Center, which is attached to the library. They had opened the doors to so many different things for this, small town Southern kid, like golf, soccer,
right?
Huge 50-on-50 dodgeball, the game Gotcha, or 21, where there's like a line of people and two people are shooting a basketball. All kinds of stuff like that. I got to play because I went to that summer camp, and there was enough kids. There's like 200-300 kids. So anytime you needed a sports, like kickball or something, there was enough kids to play like a full-fledged game. And also I did that at the Boys and Girls Club, even younger, in Norwood, because we'd play kickball like once a week, or there was always like two-hand touch football because there was a football field that was shared with the elementary school, and we could just walk over there.
Yeah, I mean, that actually makes me think of, too, that you mentioned the Civic Center, and you and I were both involved in this, at least to some degree, I think. I think you joined us sometimes, was when we worked at Outback, I can remember like 5 or 6 times where it'd be like me and Philip and Matt and...
Oh, the soccer?
Man, like just... Yeah,
Dude,
soccer, but there was also
favorite.
we got together for football a couple times too, and it's fun, dude.
Yeah. Yeah, and what's funny is before Matt got married, I was like, I hadn't talked to him in a minute, and I'm like, I'm holding out for a text message that's like, meet us at the soccer fields. We haven't played in 10 years, but I'm putting this together.
Yeah.
That's a special memory, dude, because like after you get out of school, sports is kind of done unless you sign up for intramural leagues, and you kind of have to work at it. It's not just as easily as accessible. But he always found people that were interested in, and it was so fun. And we'd get kicked out of places and then go to other places, other fields, and then they drive over,
Yeah.
and it was just like we got time. We can go back and forth.
Yeah, and one of the best memories I have of playing soccer was we played at this is one field near my house on the west end of Oak Ridge, where there was it was not just like you guys, like the Oliver Springs kids and me, but also like the Honduran guys from work showed up. I remember Walter played, and
they were so good.
That was, oh yeah, they were kicking our asses. Hilarious.
And it was kind of looking on it now as an adult, like probably got to be insane to go from one country to other and then work in a restaurant. So like, I bet that was really relaxing, like for them to just be like, man, I can be myself for like 10 minutes, and these guys are really cool and open minded, and like I feel safe with them, and I don't know, I'm speaking for them, I guess, but I hope that is the energy that we gave them that day.
Yeah, and it was so much fun to play with them, and I actually had this thought back in the first episode, where we were doing general nostalgia stuff. I never expressed it, but there's like, obviously soccer is huge in like Latin American countries and Europe too. But and what I hear, one of the reasons that is because it's so accessible to them, where it's just like, you just go outside and you have a ball and you just play, and it's a neighborhood thing and you just play soccer together.
Yeah.
And the thought I had was that day was, I feel like that was like our skateboarding, like it was so easy for us to just, like getting a skateboard could have been a pain sometimes, obviously, because you have to obtain one, but once you do, it's yours. Like the city's yours. You have any sidewalk, any street, any hill, and you're skateboarding. And I feel like it's just kind of culturally, like a similar thing, I bet, where it's just like not every skateboarder is poor, I guess, but in that same vein of like, that's just what you did. You went out and it was just accessible. You had the world in front of you.
Right. Yeah. And it's no thing to keep a soccer ball in your car and then, hey, you're free. Cool, man. Let's, hit the fields. I see that a lot with disc golf now, because discs are expensive, or not. They're not even expensive. There's gear that you can buy. You can literally go out there with like a paper plate and play for free. It wouldn't be that fun, but I'm saying like there's no barrier. Like with golf, you're gonna pay $70 for 18 holes. It's like, if you suck,
Right.
that's a long day of feeling like an idiot. Because it's nice, but you suck, so it's not fun. So it's hard to get in and stay consistent. And there's cheaper ways. Somebody can argue that, but with disc golf, you can just show up, and chances are you probably find a disc out there, and it's all free. So I wish that was accessible back in the day when I had way more time to kill, and it probably was, but I didn't know about it until college. Disc golf, that is.
I've only played disc golf once, and it's fun. I had a friend. It was actually my mom's boyfriend took me out to play disc golf. But no, we played disc golf, and it was a really good time. But it's funny too, like you're saying, like keeping that in your car all the time. That's another one. It's like, it just got me thinking of like, probably a super common thing with kids is freaking, just as long as you have a basketball, because that's like NBA players and stuff, like that's just where they came from. They just played a shit ton of basketball because you can, as long as there's like a rec center or anything, you had a hoop, you could play. And, and
there's concrete everywhere. Like,
right. And I hate to make that come across as like, stereotypical, that just seems to be such a commonality, with people who go on to succeed at playing basketball. It's like it was so easily accessible to them that they played it all the time because, like, why not? Mm-hmm. So that got me thinking too. Okay, so we were talking about real sports. What are your thoughts on, I know we talk about wrestling, what about sports video games?
Yeah, I was terrible at Madden. See, I guess that's PS1. I played, so back in the day when I could find, so PlayStation had came out, but you could still find Super Nintendo games mad cheap. So sports games were like 25 cents, cheap. So I had like 12, because every time I'd go to McKay's, my mama would be like, 25 cents for a game? Sure, get one. And so I would always have like 4 or 5 football games or basketball and hockey. I sucked at the hockey games, but it taught me how to play the games. But I'll tell you, I wasn't good at any football game until NFL Blitz. And for some reason, I understood how NFL Blitz worked. Madden, it was like, oh, you went off sides. And I was just like, it was so frustrating because I didn't know football rules. But on NFL Blitz, you could run at the line and it wouldn't let you go over until the ball was hiked. So it was like way more accessible, but still NFL licenses. I think that's where I learned my favorite was Green Bay. It was because of that game. I have no clue why. And it's weird how that stuff works. But we talked about that earlier, kind of finding a team silly, and then emotionally investing into it for no reason, rational reason. What about you? I loved all the extreme sports games too, but I know you're talking about regular. I guess the first sports game that I ever liked, just off the top of my head, was California Games on NES, where you'd like surf or play hacky sack or skateboard.
I've never even heard of that.
It was awesome, dude, and it was super hard, and it was super frustrating for like a 5-year-old kid, but I played it. But anyway, was there a sports game that kind of pulled you in?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, the extreme sports ones definitely. I played BMX Superfly a ton. I played the Tony Hawk games.
Dave Mirra.
Yeah, Dave Mirra. Yeah, I played a Dave Mirra game a lot. And honestly, that. I'm sure we'll do a lot more music-based episodes at some point, but like that honestly shaped probably a lot of my musical taste too. But, but then like I played a good bit of Madden when I lived with Todd. And we played Madden a lot, but and I'm bad at Madden too, like playing regular games, like just like
it's different,
an exhibition. But dude, what we had so much fun doing was rushing attack. It was like a side mini game where you were just you have the quarterback hand the ball off and you're the running back and you have to try and run through like a couple pylons that are like imitating your offensive linemen, and then you have like 2 to 3, depending on your difficulty setting, defenders trying to tackle you. So you just had to practice, your spin move and getting through the line of scrimmage and all this stuff. And it's so much fun, dude. Like Todd and I would practice those because you could play 2-player where one guy would be on offense, the other guy would be on defense. Mm-hmm. And it was fun too because you were like, okay, you can pick, which team you are. And like as much as I wanted to be like a certain team because I'm a fan, like, I think at the time I was a Browns fan, but it was like I would always pick the Falcons because on Madden 06 it was Warwick Dunn who had the highest speed rating. Mm-hmm. So you pick Warwick Dunn and you have the highest chance of escaping tackles and stuff, evading tackles. Right. And so that was a lot of fun. That specific like soundtrack was cool. It was a weird soundtrack too because it had such random music on it. It would go from like Lil Jon to Fall Out Boy and Funeral for a Friend, and it was like the most random soundtrack, but it was cool. And
I can remember. I've always loved EA's soundtrack picks. Like I don't know how they do it, but they kind of pick hits. Like you gotta plan it right. So, but they do a great job. Anyway, that's not. Their soundtracks are nostalgic to me. Joe
Yeah,
Budden.
And EA, because they had Need for Speed Underground 1 and 2, which had
Yes.
insane soundtracks.
Iconic.
Dude, such good soundtracks. But weirdly, the other thing that stands out to me, video games, like I played a bunch of sports video games, but the one that really stands out to me with a heavy sentimental value is Tiger Woods PGA Tour. And I didn't really ever play golf. My dad has for a long time, and he wanted me to, but I never. He bought me some kids clubs, and I had like a couple lessons, but I never got into it. But he and I would play Tiger Woods PGA Tour 2004 on the PS2 relentlessly, and like I got so good at that game. Like for whatever reason, I just love the dynamics of a golf game, because even now I have like multiple golf game apps on my phone, just little mini game versions or whatever. Just golf video games are so much fun to me.
Yeah, I
And,
agree.
and playing with my dad was like the big thing though. Like just, he and I would just sit down for hours and just play that game together.
Yeah, and it was just so accessible. Whether you flick it with the joystick or the rolly ball with the arcade version, it
Oh yeah,
it was
Golden
kind of
Tee,
like
yeah.
anybody could play. And I was thinking about why sports games were so accessible. I feel like parents knew without, think about parents buying video games. They don't know what's hot. They don't know what's going on. They know everybody knows the NFL or sports, any kind of branding, but they also know that that's going to be a multiplayer game. Like 4 people could play on the same team, or So I'm just thinking back to playing with my cousins or my brother. We always had either Madden or NCAA, because you could play 2-player against each other, or be on the same team. It was, and then when online came out, is even more. But I think that the multiplayer aspect really helped keep that. It sealed it into the sands of time as of things that we value, in gaming and sports mixed together.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do value all those games I played growing up, with people. Like I said, with Todd, he and I would play he was fun to play rushing attack with, but then when we play real games, like they have, I remember playing with him one time where because again, I'm bad at Madden. He was actually really good. And if I ever had like the upper hand on him, like I intercepted a ball once, he like rage quit. And if you remember him at all, that's like the exact type of person. It's not shocking, but it's just hilarious.
Yeah, and that makes it even more fun, because in college and stuff, people would do like in the dorms, there would be like brackets even. And it was a video game at the core, but in a way it was like competitive football. But we didn't have to hurt each other or be out in the cold. It was just, it was a unique way to enjoy sports, but we don't have to be in shape. It was really cool.
Right. Last thing, so at least in terms of my notes of nostalgic sports things, what about sports movies?
Oh, yeah. Air Bud is the very first thing that comes to mind. The scene in Flubber where he's playing basketball, I love that.
Yep.
That doesn't count though. So,
Why not?
sports movies. I love the Rocky movies, but that's old. You first.
Well, I typed out 3, like to kind of talk about in whatever, to whatever degree, but Remember the Titans is like, the quintessential, everyone loves Remember the Titans. It's a great movie about coming together and being,
Right.
but I did watch it recently with my wife, and it's still like a nearly perfect movie to me. Like there's so many great elements to it, but there was one element I noticed now that I didn't when I was a kid. And it's the white guy who was previously the head coach and had to become the assistant coach. He's a good character, but so many times in the movie when Denzel Washington's coach character, he would do something that the other dude didn't agree with. There were so many close-ups of his face being like, oh, I don't agree with that. It's
Right.
it's so often, like, it's like every 5 minutes of this, seeing this guy's face, like, oh, I don't know. And I'm like, dude, I don't care, like, whether you do or not. Like, that's not important to me anymore. And just once or twice is fine, but that happened a lot in that movie, weirdly.
Yeah. Maybe they were trying to capture people that still related in a weird way.
Yeah. I don't know. But it's a great movie. The other two are a little more, a little bit more comedic, lighthearted family movies. My favorite sports movie of all time, especially nostalgically, is Cool Runnings.
Yeah. Oh, I wasn't thinking of that one, but yeah, you're right. Top 10 easily.
Yeah. Such a funny movie. It's so good. Such a good, like, when they fail, or I hate to say they fail, but when their bobsled falls apart and they have to carry it down the thing, and everybody's like, that's such a good scene. Like, the whole movie's hilarious and it's a great story, but it's, man, I don't know. I just
insanely good movie. Yeah.
Yeah. Love Cool Runnings.
The one I would remember now is my favorite is The Replacements, I'd have to say.
Oh yeah.
Keanu Reeves is cool, but it's just like a underdog, even though, like, what was it? They win and then goes back to normal. Like, it's just like pretty anticlimactic, but at the same time, it's just like the story is so good and the actors are great, and people could automatically argue that it's dated, but I've always enjoyed that underdog. I'm not supposed to be here, but I'm gonna kill it because I'm badass. When I'm not working my serving job or whatever. But
yeah, and the cast is so good in it too.
So good. Gene Hackman,
yeah, Gene Hackman, Keanu Reeves, Reese Ifans is the kicker. I love him. Jon Favreau is like that crazy linebacker. Roy, like Pam's fiance in The Office, he plays like the deaf tight end.
I've watched that within this year, and I did not see that. Maybe I did.
Yeah.
I'm not thinking of it. That's cool.
Yeah, it's such a good movie. The other one I remember, so there's 3 of them in total, obviously, but there's the Mighty Ducks movies.
Yes. Huge
I know
kids.
the first and third one are fine. I don't have any emotional connection to them, but Mighty Ducks 2, when they play for the Kids Olympics or whatever it's called, dude, it's an iconic movie, like in my childhood. I watched it recently with the kids, and they didn't care about it, but I was so hype about it.
Yeah, that's that was huge back then. That was a big one, and I didn't know there was 3. Maybe I've seen them all, but I just remember maybe the first 2.
The first one is
that makes me think of Little Giants too, and Little Giants, just Little Giants. I watched that one a lot as a kid. I love Rick Moranis.
Dude, Rick Moranis is one of my favorite all-time like comedic actors.
Yeah, he's like arguably, if he would have kept going, and he still is, but he's kind of like Robin Williams, like timeless. Everybody feels like they're related to him because he's so powerful as an actor, kind of thing. Yeah,
no, I love Rick Moranis, and that was I watched Little Giants a couple years ago with Lucy, and it had a funny like. It had one of those Disney Channel vibes where it was like, he tried, it's just before the big game, and he's talking to his daughter, the ice box, and she says like, she's like, you only want me to play, you're only doing this for you, Dad. And it's like the whole reason the team was founded was because she couldn't make the boys team, and he did it because she insisted. And it's like, that's not even real. Like,
oh no, yeah. Like they just kind of forced the story to force it.
Yeah, like, because, in all the Disney Channel movies, it's like, it is the dad, like, hey, you better play basketball, you better play this, and I know you have another interest, but I don't care. But, like, in that, like, the only reason the plot happened was because she's like, hey, I don't think that's fair, and all the outcasts need a team too. So he's like, all right, I love my daughter, I'm going to do this for you. And then she's like, you only want to do this for you.
Oh man, and then like it's not believable either because Rick Moranis is so nice.
Yeah, exactly. It was a good movie. Like I still like those. There was that. I love 90s movies anyways. Like, they have a different vibe to them, but 90s kids movies were so good. I mean, and it's crazy is like there's, if you think about it, like there's a 90s kids sports movie of like every sport, cuz like you had Little Giants, and then there's like Angels in the Outfield and Rookie of the Year, and then there's The Big Green and Sandlot, and I mean there's just like,
I loved Rookie of the Year. I forgot about that one. The baseball movie, yeah.
oh
And Angels
yeah.
in the Outfield, yeah.
And that, but yeah, like every sport, it's kind of, and then Air Bud, you know. But there's like the '90s were peak for those kids sports movies for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah, and because there was a lot of like summer break and times to watch movies for kids, like
Right.
where the parents were not necessarily they're home, but they're not paying attention. But so you can watch, like, oh, I got 4 or 5 tapes on that I can watch over and over, and so that like Disney and these companies were like, well, these kids love sports, so let's just hire these retired people. They're pretty penny, sure, but everybody knows their name.
Right.
But yeah, that did shape our childhood. All right, so that brings us to time here. We have taken this episode to talk about sports and what, our life growing up and how the two worlds intertwined. We talked about meeting sports figures and what happens to them after they go from the spotlight to a normal human being. We talked about sports and video games and how they're closely related, and how it gave us stories to talk about at the lunchroom table with our friends. And we talked about how youth club sports and maybe the parents get a little too serious at times, but that if we all remember that it's in great fun, it can be fun and good for kids. Yeah, we want you to join us next time as we delve into the next topic of anything that we determine that is nostalgic and needs to be looked at through that lens. Thank you for joining in, and as always, hope to have you listen to that next episode. My name's Kris, and as always, I have Ian with me, and thank you again for listening.
Bye.